International community has to be involved in what's happening here, because if it will not be involved in what's happening here, they will meet these radical ideologies in their homes in Europe and in the United States.
Welcome to the True East podcast, where we cut through the noise and analyze the military and strategic realities shaping Israel and the Middle East. I'm Doron Spielman, and today we're looking at the biggest threats facing Israel, both in the south and critically in the north. Renewed fighting has erupted in Gaza, raising an urgent question. What does this mean for Israel's northern border? On October 8th, following Hamas's massacre in southern Israel, Hezbollah joined the fight, launching more than 8,000 rockets and missiles at Israel. In response, Israel struck Hezbollah's top commanders, most notably Hassan Nasrallah, and destroyed a significant portion of their missile and rocket infrastructure. But Hezbollah, the largest terror army in the world, has not been defeated. So the question is, where does Hezbollah stand today? Are they likely to reignite fighting with Israel? And more importantly, are we on the brink of a fourth Lebanon War? At the same time, the landscape in Syria has dramatically changed. With the collapse of the Assad regime, new players are emerging. What can we expect from Mohammed al-Julani, a former Al-Qaeda commander who now controls territory in Syria? What about the largest terror superhighway in the world, which goes from Iran through Syria and into Lebanon and is the lifeline of Hezbollah itself? And what about Turkey, which appears to be reviving its ambitions for influence in the Middle East for the first time since the fall of the Ottoman Empire? For this and more, I'm joined by Lieutenant Colonel Sarit Zahavi, one of Israel's top experts on military intelligence and on the northern border. Sarit served for 15 years in the IDF, specializing in intelligence. She is today the founder and CEO of Alma, an independent research and education center which focuses on Israel's security and challenges on the northern front. She has briefed top military officials, U.S. senators, and intelligence experts on the evolving threats from Lebanon, Syria, and Iran. Sarit, welcome to True East. Lieutenant Colonel Sarit Zahavi, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So Sarit, as we know, today Israel renewed our offensive against Hamas in the Gaza Strip, striking major military targets. The Minister of Defense, Katz, said that all the gates of hell are going to break open. We've been hitting strategic targets. Now, if I take us back to October 7th, that you and I both know very, very well, on October 8th, Hezbollah entered the frame and began shooting rockets and missiles at Israel in the north. Is there a chance, do you think, that if this continues, Hezbollah will renew its attacks against Israel, and could we be looking at the fourth Lebanon War?
To tell you the truth, my first lesson from October 7th is that as Westerns, it's almost impossible for us to predict the intentions of the other side. So to answer you, I want to start by analyzing the capabilities of Hezbollah. Allegedly, Hezbollah have capabilities to launch rockets to Israel. It had done that until the last day of the ceasefire. Almost 100 rockets in the last few days before the ceasefire, and much more before that. So I believe it still have some of these rockets, even though there were Israeli attacks in Lebanon against those rocket arsenals also after the ceasefire started. Hezbollah had difficulties with recovery. It is investing a lot of efforts in recovering its military capabilities in Lebanon, but this process is going very slow and not the way it wanted to be, for various reasons that we can discuss later. But the bottom line is that the arsenal of Hezbollah still exists, but very, very small, much smaller than it used to be. It may be interested in trying to launch some rockets to Israel, but again, I want to be very careful. I don't think it's the first priority of Hezbollah today. I think the first priority of Hezbollah today is to recover, is to invest in the recovery of the organization, whether with the manpower or with the equipment and munition, and also with bringing back the South Lebanese residents. We saw that the ceasefire with Hezbollah was signed before the ceasefire in Gaza. So I don't think it's an automatic, development that once there is an escalation in Gaza, we'll definitely see an escalation in Lebanon. I cannot overrule it, but for me, it seems like Hezbollah would be interested in trying not to do that, unless he will get only a direct order from Iran, for example, or there will be more reasons to do that.
Sarit, we managed to take out Nasrallah. We took out a lot of the Hezbollah leader structure. From Western news, there was a chart showing all of Hezbollah's leadership structure on 3 different levels, and they all, had the eliminated sign next to them. Where are we today? How are they managing to replace those leaders? Are they already in place? Where are they coming from?
Okay, so the replacement of those they lost come from 2 sources. First is from the Hezbollah commanders themselves. And we did see an assignment of new commanders, new leaders, with many of the positions that we heard that the leader or the commander, the senior commander was killed. But I think more important than that is the Iranian involvement. We see much more Iranian involvement than we used to see in the past, with bringing money, with involvement in policy, boots on the ground, sending Iranian IRGC officers on the skies. We believe that, for example, a presence of Iranian Red Crescent in South Lebanon, it's not exactly Red Crescent, it's actually IRGC coming to examine the damages. This Iranian involvement enabled Hezbollah to survive what happened, and involvement in recovery. It is with a lot of difficulties because of the funding issue. Iran needs to bring the suitcases with the money in very creative ways today. The flights from Iran to Hariri airport were completely stopped, only diplomatic flights. And in those diplomatic flights, probably the money is coming, because we've seen that after these diplomatic flights, there is money in Hezbollah to distribute to his people.
Is that for our listeners? Is that airport in Lebanon or in Syria?
Hariri airport in Lebanon. I'm talking about Hariri airport in Lebanon. I agree that also in Syria, the corridor of bringing money and munition from Syria is also very problematic today, since Ahmed Ashara blocked those ways, and Iran needs to think of new ways to assist Hezbollah to recover. But definitely, the Iranian, after Nasrallah was killed, made a choice to continue to support Hezbollah and to be much more involved in this. And it was not obvious for us to see this at the beginning. Like, we wanted to see what direction the Iranians will choose. And they chose to continue to stick with Hezbollah and to be much more involved.
So IRGC members are disguised and on the ground in Lebanon, evaluating the damages right now?
Yes. I believe so. Again, I don't have intelligence. Alma Center is all based on open source information. But from what we see, the delegations that came to Nasrallah's funeral, and as I've said, the presence of Iranian Red Crescent, and also we see a lot of PR activity to market the Iranian assistance to the recovery of the Lebanese, all of this. And again, when you look at the decision-making process inside Hezbollah, right after Nasrallah was killed, you understand that there were parents there that assisted the child to grow again and to recover the damages that Israel caused him.
And so the Iranian parent hasn't abandoned the child. So if we're looking at the picture of Iran as the octopus and these tentacles, and kind of the idea that the tentacles have been cut off and removed, what I am understanding from you is that Iran is still fully invested in regenerating the tentacle that is called Hezbollah.
Exactly. Look, I used to serve in the Israeli intelligence, and there were a lot of debates in the past about whether Hezbollah is a Lebanese organization or an Iranian organization. there is no contradiction. Those who truly understand Hezbollah understand that Hezbollah is an organ, is part of the Ayatollah's body. You cannot cut the organ deliberately. On the contrary, you want to keep it, you want to support it, you want to nourish it. And this is what is being done. Hezbollah cannot exist ideologically without the Iranian parenthood, without the Iranian support. But the whole mission of Hezbollah is to distribute the Islamic Revolution values in Lebanon and to build another small Iran, if you like, in Lebanon. That's the first and most important mission of Hezbollah, even before fighting Israel. And that's why there is no existence to Hezbollah without Iran.
We know that Iran had a lot of patience in rebuilding Hezbollah, and Hamas for that matter. They waited 18 years between 2006 and 2024 before unleashing Hezbollah's capabilities. Israel was standing off at very limited strikes throughout Hezbollah during that entire time. And if Iran is re-engaging in that policy by saying, okay, we'll hold back Hezbollah right now from joining a Gazan foray so that we can rebuild them, what is Israel doing about this?
Okay, I must say that here there was an Israeli dilemma once the ceasefire was signed. What exactly to do? How exactly to prevent Hezbollah from recovering, and also how not to repeat the mistakes of the past. Like, as you said, in the past 18 years, Israel did nothing about Hezbollah in Lebanon. We had a campaign between the wars in Syria. We tried to stop as much as possible, and very little eventually, as we understand, the corridor of smuggling of weapons through Syria into Lebanon. But we hardly, if ever, did anything about Hezbollah in Lebanon. And we enabled the monster to grow. This is, by the way, also true with Hamas. And I think this is also a lesson from October 7th, that we cannot enable the monster to grow anymore. We must make sure that we keep it very, very small in a way that will not put in danger the majority of the Israelis, and in a way that will not put in danger the Galilee where I live. And the lesson was learned, and today I think Israel had done two things. First, Israel made it very clear that as long as the Lebanese army is not disarming Hezbollah, and it is not disarming Hezbollah, Israel will do that. Israel is still present in Lebanon in 5 hills. This is also for psychological reasons, to enable the people that are now coming back to the communities, specifically in the past 2 weeks, after more than a year and a half that they were evacuated, to give them a little bit a sense of confidence. Because if IDF will not be present on those 5 hills, Hezbollah will. And today, the mothers that are coming back to these communities, when they look up, they see an Israeli flag rather than a Hezbollah flag. This is very important. And second, Israel is attacking in Lebanon every day. There is a ceasefire, and yet Israel is attacking in Lebanon every day. And Israel is attacking Hezbollah activity in Lebanon every day. So Hezbollah didn't stop its activity, its military activity. And Israel actually didn't completely stop its military activity. And yet the ceasefire still holds. That's, I think this kind of things can only exist in the Middle East. But this is the lesson of October 7th, that we are not going to enable Hezbollah to do whatever it wants once there is a ceasefire. And whenever we identify a military activity, wherever it is, by the way, whether it is South Lebanon or on the border with Syria to smuggle weapons, Israel is there to stop it. And this is happening every day.
So, on this morning on the car ride, there was an advertisement on the radio offering Israelis the opportunity to do tourism activities in the north of Israel, subsidized. Obviously, the Israeli government is trying to encourage Israelis to relive the north. They're encouraging Israeli communities to the north of you to return to their homes. If we're in a situation where Israel's, even at the maximum, only within around 2 kilometers, and I was with the Israeli forces, I saw still the Litani River is very far away. It's porous, and there are Hezbollah fighters. We've seen them burying their dead in villages not too far from the border, Kilim or in Al-Ras. How can we tell Israeli families to go back to their homes?
Hezbollah of today is not. First, I must say I agree. I agree that people should go back to their homes. Okay. It doesn't, with the situation today and the situation of the state of Israel in general, doesn't promise any Israeli 100% security. anywhere in Israel. By the way, anywhere in the world. Now, after having said that, Hezbollah today is very different than Hezbollah of a year and a half ago. As I've said, the amount of rockets was degraded severely. And Radwan Brigades, which is the Nukhba of Hezbollah, which is the elite unit of Hezbollah, which was supposed to be more professional than the Nukhba of Hamas, which was supposed to launch the invasion into Israel, got a huge blow from the IDF. Most of its commanders were killed, and many of the operatives, the infrastructures that they prepared for the invasion were dismantled because, as I've said, IDF cleared those areas next to the border. And the recovery process is very slow and very difficult for Hezbollah. If you ask me whether two terrorists can cross the border and enter into a community, even with all the security measures and the IDF presence and all the, observation capabilities that we have, this can happen. It can happen everywhere in all the borders of Israel, not only from Lebanon, but it doesn't mean that we can't live there. It just doesn't mean that. We should live there. We should bring the families back. But at the same time, we must make sure that Hezbollah is not recovering. And I think this is what the IDF is doing. Now, as for tourism, here I think it's much more problematic because you're going for a vacation to relax. And if you're taking a bed and breakfast next to the border and throughout the night you hear explosions, well, it's not exactly relax. It's a different kind of tourism, the one that I'm dealing with in Alma, the people that are coming to see the situation from a security point of view. Israel's internal tourism will be a problem. As long as we enforce, as long as the situation is unstable, it's a problem to attract tourists. Now, Israelis are coming. Israelis want to see the Galilee bloom, and they are coming to help cleaning the communities and to buy and to waste money in those communities. But if we're looking for the long run, I think we need stability. We cannot continue in having sounds of war all the time. I can tell you from tonight, I hardly slept. Throughout the night, I heard the sounds of war, and I didn't miss those sounds in the past 2 months that it was relatively more quiet. So.
And I can see, based on your background, there's children in your home. I mean, these are families. These are an entire family, experiences this. If it can't continue, if this kind of warfare, ongoing warfare, even kind of low level, but IDF attacking, and if we're asking people to move to communities in Israel, and I understand that, anyone can be attacked anywhere in the world. However, after October 7th, Israelis are going to be very leery. And as much as we want to encourage them to move to the north, paint me the picture of what could best guarantee. What would you want to see from the IDF, Sarit? You're Lieutenant Colonel. Very few people know the north as well as you. What would you like to see happen to give us the best case scenario from a security perspective in the north?
I must give you a complicated answer because what I want to see as an expert is very different from what the women and the mothers to daughters want to see when they are coming back to their homes. The mothers are saying, we want to see Israeli flags on the other side. We cannot feel confident if we see Hezbollah flags. And the Hezbollah flags will come back. We already saw them with Hezbollah flags on the other side of the world. So, you mentioned October 7th. From the psychological point of view, October 7th is a trauma for the people of the North that feel lucky. Every day, we feel lucky that it didn't happen to us, because it was supposed to happen to us. And in Alma Center, we predicted that it will happen to us. And we were very lucky that eventually Hezbollah didn't invade. So this is from the psychological point of view and the feeling of the people that are coming back to live there. From an expert point of view, I think that what I would want to see is a true change in the state of Lebanon, or the question of what is Lebanon? What do the Lebanese want for themselves? Do they want to become a Hezbollah state, fighting against Israel for generations, or do they want to have peace? If they want to have peace, Hezbollah cannot exist in Lebanon. As long as Lebanon doesn't designate Hezbollah as a terrorist organization, as long as the banks of Hezbollah are still open in Lebanon, as long as the Lebanese army is not publishing any proofs for the disarmament of Hezbollah, and IDF is the one who eventually is enforcing the resolution of emptying the South Lebanon area from any illegal weapon. It means that we are not going to see a true change in our future, and it's only a matter of time until they will figure out ways to rebuild their capabilities. When I'm saying to the people of the communities next to the border that they can come back, I am not promising them that they can come back forever or that they can come back and feel secure forever. I'm saying that today the situation is much better and they can come back. But if we're looking years ahead, of course, it should be a thorough change in the question of what is the state of Lebanon and what the Lebanese truly want and what is the role of the international community in this process. International community, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a little bit rude, participated in fooling ourselves, including the UN forces here, in fooling ourselves with, for how long this situation will last, which is Hezbollah on the borderline. And nobody did anything to actually implement the UN resolutions. This is not going to repeat itself anymore. This is clear to all parties here. Now the situation is different. There is much more involvement of United States and France in the current agreement, in the current arrangement. I hope there will be less involvement of the UN because it was not a positive involvement throughout the 18 years. And I hope that this will bring to a true change in the behavior of the Lebanese politics. Otherwise, we are not going to see any difference.
So the change will need to take place within Lebanon. We know Lebanon has been a war-torn country for around the last 40 or 50 years. It's separated into many various different groups: Christian, Muslim, Hezbollah, Shiite. There are Sunnis living there. My question to you is, we just saw reports of a negotiation. Surprising. I mean, at least I was surprised that Israel all of a sudden, amidst all of this, without Lebanon showing they're dismantling Hezbollah, Israel offered to open negotiations with Lebanon for the first time in 50 years, from what I understand, over the territorial border. How does that play in? What is Israel actually trying to do here? And is this an attempt to shore up the Lebanese government like you're talking about?
I'm not sure that this is what Israel is trying to do. I have my instinct that maybe it's what America is trying to do. And I think it will be a huge mistake. I think that if we are again starting from the end of the process, we will find ourselves in a very problematic situation. I don't understand completely the idea of now solving the land dispute between Israel and Lebanon. The border dispute is not the issue. Let's say that we will have negotiations and Israel will give up all of these areas and whatever. What about Hezbollah? What about the military presence of Hezbollah in South Lebanon? What about the disarmament of Hezbollah? That's the true question. And as long as we are not dealing with that and we ignore the fact that the Lebanese armed forces is fighting for Hezbollah now, for example, on the Syrian-Lebanese border, defending Hezbollah in its battles against the new government of Syria, if we are ignoring that and we are enabling Hezbollah to rebuild its capabilities in South Lebanon, we did nothing with all these nice agreements. In the Middle East, agreements has no meaning if you don't make a follow-up to make sure that they are truly implemented.
So before we fly over to Syria and look on the ground, I want to touch a point you just said. You're telling me that the Lebanese army, which is supposed to be dismantling Hezbollah and is responsible for dismantling Hezbollah, is defending Hezbollah in the crossfighting between Hezbollah and the regimes in the Syrian state.
Yes, and under the excuse that Hezbollah issued a statement that they are not involved in those crossfire, even though it is clear that these people are Hezbollah loyalists. These are families that are connected to Hezbollah for decades. There is no reason that they would stop now. The Lebanese army is saying we came to protect Lebanon because it's a crossfire between Syria and Lebanon. But actually, there is no reason why Lebanon will fight Syria and vice versa.
Incredible, Sarit. These are some incredible insights. that you don't see on the news. First, that there are IRGC operatives in Lebanon.
They are fighting because the new regime in Syria, which is also a terrorist regime, okay? But the new regime in Syria,
ISIS affiliated,
the leader of Al-Qaeda in Syria is now the president of Syria. This government is now the one who is blocking the corridor of smuggling weapons from Iran to Hezbollah and doesn't enable Hezbollah to get the weapons into Lebanon. That's why they are fighting.
So this is what I want us. I want us to dive into this deep, and I was waiting for this to open up. But just for our listeners, the terror superhighway that brings arms, weapons, and cash, a lot of it that goes to Hezbollah, was originally being sent from Iran, and hopefully you'll elaborate, to Syria. From Syria, it was being smuggled to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Can you dive us in what's happening, and why would Julani, who is the former, as you mentioned, the Al-Qaeda head, who's now the head of Syria, why would he block this? Let's dive in deep here.
First, I want you to imagine how the border looks like. Again, it's not a wall. It's not a fence. In many places, there is no barrier. And it's an open border. And to block the trucks, you need intelligence. You need to know where they are. You need to know which are the roads where you're going through. There is a limited amount of roads, though, because it's not a flat area. It's hills and valleys. So if you make a simple terrain analysis, you understand where the roads are of those trucks that are going from Syria to Lebanon. Why Ahmed al-Shah, his nickname is Julani. Julani means Golan, which is the area that Israel took from Syria in 1967. And he says that he was born, that his family is originated from there. He never visited, of course, the place. He grew up in Saudi Arabia and then in Damascus. Okay, why is he an enemy of Hezbollah? Because other than the Israeli-Arab conflict, there is another conflict in the Middle East, which, by the way, took much more lives than the Israeli-Arab conflict, which is the Sunni-Shiite conflict. And this conflict comes and goes. Sometimes they can make some alliances, like the Sunni Hamas and the Shiite Iran. And sometimes they kill each other brutally. The civil war in Syria, which included this kind of conflict between the previous government of Syria, which was affiliated with the Shiite Iran. As I've said, Alawites are the previous government religion, and they are affiliated with the Shiites of Lebanon and the Shiites of Iran and the Shiites of Iraq, by the way, and the Houthis of Yemen. Okay? They fought against the majority of the population in Syria, which is Sunni. The majority of the population in Syria, which is Sunni, didn't get enough support from anybody outside. And the only one who actually gave it the dignity, the bread, and the weapon that it needed was ISIS and Al-Qaeda and the religious organizations and Turkey, which is supporting the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the ideological base to Al-Qaeda and to ISIS. And that way, eventually, after 15 years, those rebels succeeded, but they succeeded after they became very religious. They went through a process of radicalization with a support, again, of Turkey to some of those factions. It is clear to us today that the leader of Syria, who was the head of Al-Qaeda in Syria, is identifying with those Muslim Brotherhood values and with this radical Sunni identity. And that's why it is fighting the radical Shiite identity. Both of them are bad for Israel. And sometimes they are, as I've said, they are collaborating. And sometimes they are fighting brutally. Half of the population of Syria became homeless. More than 500,000 people were killed in this civil war. And that's the result of that. And only in the last weekend, we don't know the exact numbers, but it's around 1,000, maybe more than 1,000. We don't know exactly, were killed in those crossfires between the Alawite population on the seashore of Syria to the Mediterranean and the new government, which is the Shah and his guys.
Which really looked like the definition of ethnic cleansing. I mean, the videos that came out showed people crawling on the ground trying to get to safety, being, shot at point blank range, women and children, bodies on the ground. It looked like ISIS.
It is ISIS. If it looks like a duck and it sounds like a duck, it's probably a duck.
So therefore, Israel is essentially dealing with Hezbollah on the northern Lebanon border and an ISIS entity in Syria. And
you want to be accurate,
Al-Qaeda. If I put myself for one moment, I think this is really a key question. I was just discussing this with Amiad Cohen from the Beirut Center, who I know you know very, very well. Iran is clearly interested and understands that opening this terror superhighway is going to be critical. And they realize it goes via Syria, and they understand that their previous regime, their allies, the Assad regime, was overthrown. Do you think that Iran is going to be offering incentives, even though there's a Shiite, Sunni, as you mentioned, when money's involved, anything could happen? What kind of incentives could Iran offer to open up that superhighway, to refund Hezbollah by reopening the highway through Syria?
First, I'm positive that it will. Iran is willing to pay money to whoever in order to fulfill its interests. I believe that they will try to buy a route of smuggling, at least one, maybe more, in Syria as much as possible. I am not sure that they will succeed. It's an open question. We don't know. But they will definitely try. They will pay. They will pay money, first and foremost. There is a competition, though, between the Iranian influence in Syria, and which got a huge blow, and the Turkish influence in Syria. These are two empires that are fighting here. Okay, now it's not a direct war. It's not even a war yet. It's a conflict. And Turkey also has its own interest. And I think that here I have a little bit of hope. Not because Turkey is not a radical state. Turkey of Erdogan is, as I've said, is part of the Muslim Brotherhood. But since Turkey is a member of NATO, there is more leverage for pressure on Turkey to make sure that it's not going in their own directions. And that's why I have more hope today. That even if Iran will try to renew the corridor, we have tools to stop it in diplomatic way through the Turkish influence in Syria. And again, it's not that it is. I don't want our audience to divide it to good influence and bad influence or things like that, because I'm just talking about it as a tool. The ideology by itself is very problematic. Erdogan is for decades a supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood, and we are very worried of a situation that Turkey will establish proxies next to our border, or will just provide weapons to Ahmed Ashara that will threaten us. So again, it's also a complicated picture when we speak about the influence of Turkey versus Iran and the influence of that on the security of the State of Israel.
Sarit, before we end, I just want to kind of summarize a little bit of this. And the vision that just popped into my mind is it's almost like we've gone back 100 years or to the time of World War I, where you have the rebirth of these empires. You have the Persian Empire, which is controlled by Islamic Iran, is very radical. You have now Turkey, who it seems used the word, imperialistic empire. Turkey is now, it's almost like the Ottoman Empire is rebuilding itself. It looks like Turkey is adopting, they're beginning to expand, they're beginning to take over land, they're developing proxies. There is a third empire here, which is the most powerful one in the world, which is the United States. Before we wrap up, can you give us an insight? Many of our listeners are from the United States. What is the role of the United States in Lebanon right now, and what influence could it have on the direction that regime takes?
In Lebanon, extremely important. United States had given billions of dollars to the Lebanese armed forces during the years. And today it is even more involved with the new arrangement between Israel and Lebanon. United States was involved in the nomination of a new president in Lebanon 2 months ago and a new prime minister in Lebanon. United States demanded that the new government of Lebanon will not include Hezbollah, which not exactly happened because all the ministers of the new government of Lebanon were nominated by political parties, even though they are not politicians. 5 were nominated by what it called the Shiite couple, which is Alma, another Muslim Shiite party in Lebanon, and Hezbollah. 3 to Alma, 2 ministers to Hezbollah. The Shiite couple, it's an expression that comes from Lebanon. The Lebanese use this expression. They themselves use this expression. And eventually, even though these ministers are considered to be professionals, like for example, the 2 ministers of Hezbollah are doctors, they were nominated by Hezbollah. We cannot ignore it. United States can put more pressure on Lebanon. I called it in one of my documents, maximum pressure policy on Lebanon, not only on Iran, on Lebanon, to make sure that it's truly going towards a change. Because if we go only half the way, it will not succeed. United States can put the pressure on Lebanon to close, as I've said, the banks of Hezbollah, Kart Hassan. That's the name. They are still legal in Lebanon. Can put the pressure on Lebanon to close the institutions of Hezbollah in Lebanon, whatever they are, financial, educational, whatever, to create a different state. This pressure has risks with it. We cannot ignore them. Whether Lebanon will deteriorate to a civil war, it's a risk. But I think the risk is lesser than it used to be, because Hezbollah is weaker than it used to be. So the American, since they are giving aid to the Lebanese army, the Americans can put a lot of pressure on the Lebanese government, which was not done in the past 18 years. The money went to the Lebanese armed forces, and there was no pressure to change the policy towards Hezbollah. I think United States, I don't know if this is what you meant to ask, but I think United States can put the pressure and can be very much very important to the future of the Middle East, not only with regard to Lebanon. It is also with regard to Iran, of course, and with regard to Syria. The fact that the Syrian foreign minister this week will visit Europe and will be accepted there as the legitimate diplomat, as if nothing happened. You talked about ethnic cleansing. Nothing happened in Syria last weekend. This is truly a problem. Everybody should make sure that the new Syrian government is not building capabilities of ISIS, is not building capabilities of ethnic cleansing, either against Israel or even inside Syria. Doesn't matter. International community has to be involved in what's happening here, because if it will not be involved in what's happening here, they will meet these radical ideologies in their homes in Europe and in the United States.
You know, I think that now that Trump is in the White House again and he sees the world unfolding, he was obviously elected for many, many reasons, but one of the things he was hoping to do was to reduce the United States' involvement in international affairs. It looks like the United States can't hang up their hat yet. They still have a role, a major role, and a critical role in helping reshape the Middle East, which is in massive flux right now. It's like puzzle. It depends how you're going to put together the pieces. And that could affect the life of Israelis, Middle East, and if I understand what you're saying, ultimately Americans for decades to come.
Yes, I agree that the expansion of the Abraham Accords, for example, is also very important. But with Saudi Arabia, I think this is a little bit more challenging, because it goes through solving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which I don't see with the radicalization of the Palestinian society and the support to Hamas also in the West Bank. I don't see how can we talk on any Israelis' concessions now. Again, I think that we should work bottom up instead of top down. And Americans' policies, doesn't matter by the way which government, during the years tend to work top down. If you have, for example, elections in a society that doesn't understand what democracy is, elections are not going to reflect anything about the people's will and are not going to bring freedom and human rights to those societies. So we need to work bottom up, and bottom up means how do we create a new Gaza without Hamas? How do we create a West Bank without a corruptive entity of the Palestinian Authority? It's okay to have an autonomy to the Palestinians, but eventually what grew up there, it's not exactly what the Palestinians and the Israelis wanted when they signed the Oslo Accords. And many Palestinians hate the Palestinian Authority as much as they hate Israel. So infrastructures need to be built in order to eventually make Israel make concessions and solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And that's why I think that working with Saudi Arabia, if Saudis will be willing to walk bottom up and not top down, it will succeed. But if they will insist on walking top down and all these issues of establishing a Palestinian state, I don't see how Israelis today will vote for them.
It won't be good for them, and it certainly won't be good for us. Sarit, you have been incredible. This was a brilliant analysis of so many moving pieces that are happening at the same time. Few people could do it like you. You've been studying this. I will say I visited you before October 7th, and you were the one who was standing in the north, created an institute called Alma, the Alma Research Institute in the north, preparing for the Hezbollah war. Everyone was like, what is this woman doing with her institute? Located in the north, you didn't put it in Tel Aviv, you didn't put it in Jerusalem, because you knew it was coming. You've been supplying intelligence and research reports and analyses for years. And thank God we have you. Thank you, Sarit, so much.